recording.
This time. Okay.
The Smooth Breakfast presents the headlines, the stories, the news. In-depth analysis of national current affairs. Freshly pressed.
Okay,
on
so
Smooth
please, mic's up.
98.1.
You're welcome to Smooth 98.1. If you just joined us, well, you're just in time. It's time for Freshly Pressed right here on Smooth 98.1. My name is Kayode, and of course, I've got...
My name is Valentine, and we're joined by our guests, analysts in the studio. They're the persons of Gbolahan and Adedunmade. Gbolahan is at Mr. G Quest on Twitter. Good morning.
Good morning, Valentine, and good morning, Lagos.
All right. Good morning, guys.
Good morning.
Okay, so you can follow the show real time up on social media. We are at Smooth 91 FM. Please use the hashtag
Freshly Pressed 981
to be a part of the conversation.
Or you can send us messages through WhatsApp. Send it to the number 0809 444 0981.
All right, so we'll start off with our first story, and our first story comes from the Premium Times this morning. So I'm going to start with you, Gbolahan. It says here, alleged 3.6 billion naira fraud. Court fixes February 11 for ex-NDDC boss trial, and they're saying that on Tuesday, the Federal High Court on Tuesday fixed February 11th and 12th for the trial of the former director of the Niger Delta Development Commission. That's Tuyo Omatsu Tuli and others. They're charged with 3.6 billion naira fraud. Wow, your thoughts about this?
Yes, this case has been going on now since sometime last year, also 2018. Even though the crimes were actually committed in August 2014, between August 2014 and September 2015. And the crime that has been leveled against the former Niger Delta Development Commission director, which is Antonio Omasuli, and four other companies as well are also involved in this. And there's a Don Parker Properties Limited, Francis Momo as well to another gentleman, and a Building Associates Limited as well. So there are four parties that are involved in this corruption and money laundering cases that have been leveled against this gentleman, and it's for 3.6 billion naira. Allegedly, it's alleged that he received this amount from a company known as a Starline Commission or so. And they received this money for a project that was executed, and the money was paid into one of these corresponding companies. It was paid into Don Parker Properties or so. So it's been put to him that the company was actually, Don Parker Properties was actually set up or is allegedly to be owned by Toyo Omatsuli or so. So the money was received through that account, and as such, the EFCC has confiscated some of these properties and the businesses as well, so that is allegedly to have been owned by this gentleman or so. So the case has been on since about September 2018 or so, and there's been an adjournment upon adjournment. This time around as well, the case was brought up in court, and there was a request for an adjournment. Most of these gentlemen were granted bail, and they were granted bail to the sum of 100 million and two shorties as well.
I was coming to that. 100 million and two shorties.
Yes.
Isn't that a little too for someone who's running this kind of a...
Well, you can only go according to the laws that are stipulated. I mean, you will find out that when you look at the bail conditions according to the law, sometimes you wonder as well too that these are very trivial bail conditions to have been set. But anyway, these were the bail conditions that were set, and they met it. And they've also asked for an adjournment as well too, based on the reason that one of the alleged perpetrators of this crime as well too came into court saying that he had a bad leg or so. So the judge has adjourned the case again until February 11 and February 12 to have the hearing or so. Let's hope the EFCC is up to task anyway to bring this court case to a logical conclusion or a logical conclusion as well.
Thank you so much, Gbolahan. All right, let's move on to our next story, and this one here comes to you, Adedunmade. We'll talk about Buhari. This one's from the Premium Times. Buhari rolls out basic healthcare provision fund, and we're talking about that from Premium Times. But before we head into that, though,
Let's look at this story from Punch newspaper. Federal government Labour sign pact. National Assembly to get minimum wage bill January 23rd. So the federal government and organized labor held a meeting yesterday, and apparently seems they've reached an agreement with the presidency to send the bill to the National Assembly for their ratification. It's after 3 days of meeting they've come to this conclusion, and it's coincided with the same time that labor members of the labor union nationwide embarked on a strike, or rather a protest, just to push home their demands. They said the reason why they asked for this, they've been pushing this cause and asking for this particular things, that it's talking about the minimum wage and certain things contained within the documents for over a decade now. Adedunmade, what are your thoughts on this?
Well, obviously, the issue of wages is important to almost everyone in this country. As long as you work, it's really important to you. Now, compared to other countries, we are not doing a great job in regard to our level in which the minimum wages, because actually we are paying about $38, to as the minimum wage, and that is 18,000 naira. Whereas we have in other countries, we have like in Algeria where it is $175, which is about 83,000. In Belgium, it's 810,000 naira. In Cameroon, it's 38,000. Chad is 60,000. Denmark is 900,000. I can go on and on. There are countries that are doing better than us in this regard. But I also like the fact that the NLC has taken the fight to the state governments, because that is where some of the burden on paying this wage is actually going to stay. I noticed that the Benue State Governor said that's Governor Otom said he will pay if he can afford it. I feel that's a red flag, and I think that should call people's attention. Because
Why? Why is it a red
because
flag?
he is the only one that has come out to say the truth. Like, if I can afford it, he has put a condition. That means there might be other state governors who also have conditions.
Well, it's
too,
similar
like
to
this.
what all the other governors are saying. And
Exactly.
And
So-
if the National Assembly says, okay, this is become law, I mean, the National Assembly don't need to remind them often, but when it becomes
When
law,
it becomes
they have
law,
no option. than
Yes,
to pay
then they
them.
have to borrow to pay if they are going to be in more debt, So all these things have issues that touch. Then Ogun State as well, the people there are asking for 35,000 naira. I think that's actually going to be good if that can actually get to work. I think states should also challenge themselves to pay more, at least if they can
for
afford to.
state workers.
Yes, for state workers.
Because there are state workers
Yes,
and federal workers.
yes, for state workers. At least that will encourage them to do more. Now, the most important thing now is even how we're going to get this bill to the National Assembly by the 23rd of January. I do not have so much confidence that they are actually going to be transmitted by them. Oh, sorry,
Why
that the
not?
bill is actually going to be transmitted by them.
Members of the House National Assembly actually resume on the 16th.
On the 16th,
And
yes,
so,
they
yeah.
resume on the 16th. But there is something that I'd like to say, and I'd like to quote the Minister of Labour. And the story here, he added that necessary meetings on the part of the federal government will be held next week to ensure that the timeline is met. Secondly, he now says we'll take all the statutory meetings of the Federal Executive Council, National Economic Council, and National Council of State. Now we are supposed to do all this in about 2 weeks.
1 week.
In 1 week.
Yeah,
I don't think that's going to happen. So they're going to come up with a delay.
I hope not. Yeah, thank you very much. Let's move on.
okay, so well, if you just joined us, don't forget you can send your messages to 0809-444-0981. Let's move on to our next story, and our next story comes to Devoe, who just joined us in the studio. Military releases Daily Trust journalist, seizes computers and phones, and this comes from the Punch newspaper. Devoe, let's just dive right into this. Your thoughts about this?
Yes, finally, more of the truth of the reality is coming to bear. As you can see, the military did say that it wasn't an invitation, it was an invite to look at what was seen as a national security risk. 2 days after the federal government asked the military to vacate their premises, the detention of their key officers was still being held. Now, though the editor-in-chief, Utsman, has mentioned that he was treated fairly, but the, what do you call it? the Association of Journalists have also condemned this detention, and that if they had any issue with what they wrote, they should have gone to the court of law. Now, this is more or less an update on the situation, but I still think the federal government needs to look at this issue, because if there's an error or if there's a default on behalf of the media, there are law-abiding, constitutionally approved channels of which the military must take. The military is not a law unto itself. It cannot just of its own volition begin to arrest people.
Okay.
It has no constitutional, what do you call it, backing to be able to do that. So what do we now say about this usurping of the law or usurping of legality?
But they said that there was a Secrets Act that was violated, and that was the reason why they carried out these arrests.
Yes, but the that's why I said that there's a constitutional channels meant for this. The enforcement is, if the military had an issue, they would pass it through the police.
Yes, you see, on September 12, 2017, some soldiers during the Operation Python Dance 2 beat up journalists in Abia. Was that also about the Oath Act? You know, the military have been
That's
doing
different
it for so long.
circumstances, different.
No.
It
Different circumstances, fine, but different results.
No,
All that ends in the military acting aggressively towards journalists. That's what it boils down
So
to at the end of the day.
if you look at it on that angle, not disputing your point, but saying that that is lopsided, look at it from both angles. Yes,
I understand that
agreed,
they had
agreed,
to protect.
Agreed. The military went over the top. Even the presidency called them to order in a few hours after that action was taken. They reacted. Agreed. But the journalists, did they do the right thing? Did they go through due process in making sure that they get permission before releasing sensitive information, or check from both parties involved?
So,
really,
as
because
a
you know how
journalist,
the fight against insurgency has been going on for a while.
I understand.
The military has been facing a lot of backlash from the populace about their actions towards curbing this
I
menace.
understand that for the journalists to release the information about upcoming attacks on
Planned
attacks is wrong, but at the same time, you just said that did they take proper ask for
due
consent?
diligence.
So when I want to write a story as a journalist, I'm supposed to write to the military to ask
you
for
quote your
permission.
source first of all,
And
and
there's
verify
also,
from your source. Okay, is this such information that you have authorized from your quarters? Because you know, information that press releases will get from the military. If it comes from the military, yes, they give you a go ahead. It's okay. Release this information. I'm just saying, just for us to look at it from different angles, right?
I know you're taking a devil's advocate position, but
That's
two
right.
wrongs don't make a right.
Sure.
And like I said yesterday, the media's position, that's Daily Trust position, was not out of tandem with what was already known and had been said.
Okay.
That the Boko Haram has invaded some issues is well known. That
Agreed.
the army is preparing to take back what is well known.
Thank you very much, gentlemen.
Thank you very much. Let's move on to our next story, and this one comes to you, Gbolahan. It says Ambode arrests army officer and another for driving against traffic. This comes from the Daily Times. Your thoughts about this?
Well, it's a good move. I think we should cast our mind back to a few months ago, where Lagos State came up and said that there was a lot of unruliness on Lagos roads, and a lot of people were driving illegally or so. And so Lagos State was going to be clamping down heavily on those who violated traffic, who committed them or violated the traffic laws or so. So this is what a typical example of what we normally see anyway. The governor was returning back from Abuja, it was mentioned, and this happened along the airport road in Lagos or so. And there were two people that had been arrested. We're talking about an army personnel that was arrested. The number plates to the registration number plate to the car was mentioned there, and another gentleman was also arrested as well too. But it raises a lot of questions that we should be asking. Does it have to come down to the governor himself to stopping this? Why does it have to be the governor? In a country where the laws work and things work, we should have the police and we should have people arresting such as well, the last more officials as well, should be doing their job.
Because officers who wear uniforms, officers who have some level of authority feel like they're above the law.
Their
And it will
staffs.
probably take the chief security officer of the state to call them to order.
Well, that's a state of lawlessness. When
That's
you have people of that nature committing such crimes and they're telling me just because they're in uniform, no one should be above the law.
But do you think that some agents, some security agencies that have been put in place, like say the last one, for example, that to checkmate traffic, do you think that they can be given like more authority to checkmate these guys, like the soldiers, for example?
Well, you know, it's about the consequences of people's actions. I mean, when the military, when a man in a military uniform does this over and over again and he gets away with it, even though you're talking about having enough power by the last one officials, okay, well, how about reporting it to the military authorities and let them take action on it? Until that happens, until people start to pay for their crimes, we would never see an end to this.
All right, thank you very much for that one. And well,
No,
Valentine?
I have nothing to add. I mean, we see bus drivers flout traffic rules every day. Nobody calls them to question. So anyway.
All right, moving on to our next story. This one here comes to you, Devoe. Buhari rolls out basic healthcare provision fund, and this was taken from the Premium Times. So far, there's a lot of funds that have been invested in this, and your thoughts? Let's just dive right into it, Devoe.
I'm going to be quick on this story so I can have more time on the electoral story. Well, the truth is the administration has rolled out on behalf of the budget the Basic Healthcare Provision Fund, which is basically 1% of the consolidated generated revenue of the federal government, and donor funds, of which many have come in from the Bill Gates and Melinda Foundation, as well as the Global Financing Facility, as well as the DFID. These are people who have always worked with Nigeria to improve some of our infrastructural gaps. Now, this is focused primarily to the primary healthcare centers, which have been moribund, as you all know. They're almost like death centers and mortuaries around the country. Although it's coming a little late, I wish it had come earlier in the administration. It would have beefed up the position of this presidency, but it's never too late if you're giving us something to make it work.
Thank you.
All right. Okay, so let's move on to our next story.
And this one is for you, Adedunmade. Why I haven't fired service chiefs acted on Inspector General of Police. So there have been a lot of calls from different quarters asking the federal government and the president precisely to remember that the Inspector General of Police is 60 years old, he served 35 years, so it's time for him to leave. You know, that's been the call from different groups. But then the president granted a TV interview, something that's of rare occurrence that we're happy to see in 2019. Hopefully it's a greater year. Well, the president says the performance of the service teams may be disappointing, but he will continue to take responsibility and take the fall, or rather the blame for the, what their actions or inactions. And he went further to explain to everybody, or to the interviewer, why, or to Nigerians in general, why he wouldn't interfere or switch positions or change roles at this time, because he says it's a sensitive period, and altering that would affect the fight against insurgency. What are your thoughts, Adedunmade?
Well, when one's performance is disappointing and you still decide to keep that person, I believe that's embracing mediocrity. But let's put that one on one side. Because there are so many things that the president said I have a problem with. Now, the second part is this. On the issues or on the reasons why he has kept them again, he said because of their loyalty. Now, I did not hear things like loyalty to the country or loyalty to the Nigerian people, but loyalty to his administration.
Semantics? No?
Nepotism.
Okay.
That's 2. 3, he also said PDP may be responsible, I choose the word may be responsible for insecurity. He said because they looted so much funds, they have the capacity. Let us not forget that half of PDP is now in APC. So the people that looted the funds are now in your party. And what are you doing about that? So that's that statement also goes out the window. Now, he has said that, well, all I'm just going to say to round it up is I was not really impressed with all the reasons that he gave for the abysmal, should I say,
Action?
no, for the abysmal, there's a word I'm looking for that shows work that he has done. For the abysmal work that he has done, I believe that he gave so many excuses. He did not inspire me to believe that he has done a great job and is worth voting for again.
But do you agree with the point about the reason he gave for not necessarily switching roles at this time?
Now, of course, I would not put aside his experience. And if he says from his experience, he believes that these things are important, fine. But he has to find a way to marry his experience with ensuring that competent people are in that position. Come on, out of the 17 heads of our national security agencies, 14 are from the north, and he's saying he picked all those people because of their loyalty, not because of the output of their work. Come on, man.
Thank you very much, Adedunmade. Let's take a few messages here on WhatsApp. Chioma sent this one. Said, Valentine, you seem very vested in taking the military side. The action should be condemned unequivocally. They can't go around arresting journalists because they feel they have the rights. It's unconstitutional. I agree with you totally, Chioma. And then, of course, we need to take both sides as well. This one is from Modupe Nikoyi. Modupe says, why is Valentine playing the devil's advocate to the military versus the daily trust case? Why was so sensitive? What was so sensitive about the information published? If you read the entire article, there was nothing that Nigerians already do not know there. It's basically mentioned that Baga has been attacked and mentioned points of reinforcement following the attack. Wondering how that constitutes a problem, considering journalists were only doing our jobs. If anything, the military needs to look within itself. It has no rights coming into a newspaper that is not subject to the Armed Forces Act. It's abuse of power in this regard to the rule of law. I agree totally to the first part of your story, but then again, it's very important as journalists that we take a balanced reporting, balanced reporting view on every story that we treat. We'll take more messages right up to this. Let's move on to this next story. Vanguard newspaper has this story. INEC to transmit election results manually. So the National Commissioner for Independence, National Electoral Commission, in charge of operations, Professor Kechukwu Ibano, disclosed this yesterday. He said that at two separate quarterly meetings, he said that the reason why they cannot go the electronic route is just because it hasn't been enforced in law. They're still going by the amended Electoral Act of 2015. What are your thoughts on this?
I don't have thoughts. I'm very angry. I'm pissed.
Why?
I'm sorry for that word, but you see, we act like ostriches in this country. Because you don't believe that something is there does not mean it disappears. Sticking our heads in the ground in issues and thinking they'll go away does not make it go away. Here has been the biggest issue about the credibility, the integrity of our election, ensuring that they're transparent and fair. And this is a complete walk back, a 360 turn from what INEC had been saying before. They said, despite the fact that the president didn't assent to the bill, that they would insist on the use of, first of all, the electronic transmission, one. Secondly, the non-use of the incident forms. Here they walk back 360. One, by stating that the electoral law was not assented to by the president. Therefore, they have no backing to be able to go ahead with the electronic transmission, that the law already states how it should be used, which is how it was used in 2015, meaning that after the results are collated at the polling centers, returning officers will carry these numbers to the situation room where they...
I have a question. I understand your points from 360.
I'm not done, no, there are 3 more points.
Okay, so for the first point, but do you think this might just be a decision that was made on the premise of the suspicions that, or indications that started showing that they revealed in the last few days of certain people from different parties trying to find ways to, first of all, they said they were buying PVCs of voters, and that they were looking for ways to hack the system.
Okay, well, no, it's not a matter of suspicion. It's a matter of the law. What is the current law? You need a new law to overturn an old law. So it just simply means that this was not, because it was not done, all the while the INEC was claiming that it would insist on whatever they had in mind, it was only perfunctory. It had no backing. Number 2 issue here is that, now remember, this issue of returning officers was always subject to flaws, was also subject to integrity checks in terms of returning officers, rigging, inducement along the way before numbers. If you have 100,000 at the voting polling station, by the time it gets to INEC, it changes to about 250. You know those issues. Secondly, they also said that in this case, the manual register would be used. Now, the manual register is the incidence register, whereby when the PVC breaks down, is not working, right there and then, you can't verify anymore. So those who are present must put down their names, their numbers, and their fingerprints, and then post it on the polling station.
You do not trust that the records...
Of course, this was an opportunity for rigging.
You do not trust that the records that they've already captured from the biometrics registration process during the your activation of the PVC that's
Yes.
already on the incidents form.
Yes.
Will be you don't think that record?
No. The
will still
records
be
with
valid?
INEC are sure, but
Mm.
what they're saying is whereby the PVC breaks down or has technical issues, just like it did President Jonathan. If you remember, we
Right.
all saw it.
Sure.
Then you will use a manual approach, which is to take the names down of people in front of you, take their numbers and their fingerprints. That won't be verified, but the numbers will go in for the count. Thirdly, they said no new polling station. You see, this is us going backwards into what we're trying to avoid. With the insecurity and the issues surrounding this election, I really doubt now about the integrity of this election coming. Remember the issues of underage voting?
Yes.
Now you add that to voter buying. INEC really has issues, and I don't know how they're going to defend this come this 2019
Well, they're flagging a
elections.
lot of issues, including the fact that 8 million Nigerians are yet to collect their PVCs.
That
So
has
please-
nothing to do with this.
It has a lot of things to do with it, but let's move on now to Vanguard newspaper for the story. Cargo scanners slow customs airport operations, and this is a call that's coming from different quarters now, especially the Nigerian Customs Service. They said, by this report, investigations were carried out. It shows that the Nigerian Customs Service have been resorting to, well, should I say, manual ways of checking the goods and services. In most cases, using the airport authorities' equipment, the smaller sized scanners to check cargo. They said this is leading to a lot of delays in security checks and verification of items that are coming through the borders. What are your thoughts on this, Adedunmade?
Yes, we all know the problems that lack of scanners can cause and continue to cause to our efficiency in the airport. But I want to read a paragraph quickly. A FAAN official, that's a FAN official at MAA1 Lagos, who refused to be quoted because he was not authorized to speak, told Vanguard Maritime Report that FAN is aware that allocation for the purchase of new scanners for the Customs Service receives regular attention, but there is an understanding between individuals within Customs and FAN to corner the funds, while availing the former use of the latest lighter weight scanning machines for smaller packages. Basically, apparently, money has been coming out, but they don't chop the money. So, make them go find the money, basically.
Speaking to who exactly?
To the government, the people in charge of FAN and the people in charge of the airport. I believe that is our government, because if a FAN official can come out and say that, okay, some monies have been released in the past for the maintenance of this 30-year-old machinery, and even if the money has been released for also replacing them, but nothing has been done to date, then come on, I believe that we need to get to the bottom of this before we move forward, because that means that if you even put more money into it, the money is still going to go away.
All right. Thank you very much. Let's take a few messages before I'll go to the last story. This one is coming from Tolu Alabi from Halifax. He said, we need a strong action against corruption by empowering the judiciary and making scapegoats out of these criminals. Otherwise, we'll just keep going around in circles. This one's from Samuel.
Samuel says 100 million naira bail on an adjudged civil servant whose salaries and allowances cannot be near that amount for being able to meet it. He's probably guilty, in my opinion.
And then Amako Chimobi from Oluyapapa said, good morning, Nigerian politicians are regarded as the highest paid politicians in the world. Still, their civil servants are the poorest and the government of the day does not get disturbed by this predicament. So this issue of minimum wage should not have taken this long. If we have politicians that care, Nigerians should vote wisely in a few weeks' time. Thank you very much, Amako Chimobi. That's a very important call. Get your PVCs, go collect your PVCs and vote. Now, Guardian newspaper has this final story. GenCos accuse NERC of crippling power sector. Gbolahan, the executive secretary of the Association of Power Generation Companies, Dr. Joe Gaji, made this revelation, saying that invariably the NERC when they instituted the multi-year tariff order, it seemed to be lopsided. It's favoring the other distribution companies over the GenCos, because when the distribution companies say they are going to, when the GenCos are given the responsibility of maybe supplying 500 megawatts of power, and the distribution companies only have 100, they are left in a tight spot.
I mean, well, we've been having this issue going on. This privatization exercise is not working at the moment. At the moment, as it stands, of course, we know that there are a lot of bottlenecks in the system. It's a system, and right now, the weakest link in the system now is the distribution company. Right now, at the moment, we're generating about 7,000 megawatts, transmitting as well, so we can transmit up to about 7,000. But the distribution doesn't actually have the capacity to take all of this power that is being generated. So what the multi-year tariff has done is that it's actually gone in the favor of the distribution company, and they've said that, look, it's only what the distribution company are capable of taking is what we will pay for. So right now at the moment there's a lot of cost that goes into generating this so much megawatt, 7,000, but at the end of the day the distribution company, which is like the last mile, can only take about 5,000 megawatts or so.
So their receiving capacity is lower than what that is coming from.
Exactly. So there's a
GenCos.
lot of shortfall, of course, from the GenCos. The GenCos are losing money because they're generating so much, but then they cannot transmit or distribute to the distribution companies. So that's where the complaint is coming for.
Alas, there's no light.
Well, you know,
so
we're still at it.
Ace from Agor sent in a message here on WhatsApp. It says, yes, National Assembly will resume January 16th, but remember that Senator Dino is still in the hospital or maybe standing trial then. It is expected the National Assembly will go pay him solidarity visit as usual, so they may not be able to seat to receive the new minimum wage bill. Also, there are more important things to do now, elections and so on. Let's take this final message from Shola.
This one here from Shola says, Ambode is it? Lagos is dirty. He literally does nothing, and we're all shouting Ambode clamps down. Not disputing what he's done, but we need governance in Lagos.
All right, and this final one, Jude from Ogobi says the arrest is good. We need sanity on our roads. Lagos will run out of time. We would love to take more of your messages. With special thanks to our analysts who came in this morning and beat the odds. Devoe Okorie, thank you very much for coming in. And of course, Gbolahan, Mr. G West, and Adedunmade at Adedunmade. Coming up next in 14 minutes, we talk sports inside the locker room. You're listening to Smooth 98.1.
The stories,
You say, Joe?
the
You
news.
did pick up the